So I kind of want to make this video for all you folks who might be somewhat new to politics, or you don't follow on the day to day. The casual observer, maybe the casual sports fan, maybe you just know me from home or whatever. I kind of want to just give you a quick overview of what American politics is like. Okay, so you have two parties, right? We operate within a two-party system. The Republican Party, traditionally and today, we're the party of business owners, more wealthy individuals. Um, really, up until the '60s, they didn't really have much of a poor working class base, and we'll get to why that has changed more recently. Really, probably since Reagan, that's changed a lot. But and so you have the Republican Party, right? The party of more wealthy individuals as far as who they represent. Wealthier individuals, businesses, corporations, that's kind of the Republican Party. You see that, whenever they get into office, there's usually some large tax cut. There's a lot of deregulation, which they'll pitch as a good thing. But a lot of us who follow this closely know that regulations are the way that you stop corporations from exploiting workers, from exploiting the environment. Obviously, when there's nothing stopping them from dumping water into a lake, if it's cheaper to dump that water into the lake, even if that's your drinking water for where you live, they'll do that because there's a multitude of examples of that happening in the past. They'll do that unless there's that regulation to stop them from doing that. So you see a lot of that when Republicans are in office. You really saw it with the CARES Act. The Republicans were fighting tooth and nail to get that corporate liability shield, which basically meant that if a corporation or company, put their workers in harm's way because of COVID, they would have a liability shield, meaning they couldn't get sued because of it. So, these are all just examples of kind of what goes on. When Republicans are in office, you see a lot of this stuff. The Democrats, on the other hand, are supposed to be this big tent party, right? They say that a lot, for the working class. Traditionally, they had labor unions, more lower class, working class folks would be in the Democratic Party. And really, after the '60s and the Civil Rights Act, and then the Southern Strategy by the Republicans, the Democrats pretty much had a really good stranglehold on the black vote, and still do to this day. So traditionally that's who they were, but really after Reagan, starting with Clinton, going through Obama, now into Biden, they represent corporations pretty much the same as, the right and Republicans. It's less so, the gun lobby. It is the military industrial complex for sure, but it's more so, health insurance companies, health insurance lobby. So yeah, that's kind of who the Democrats now serve as well, but they have a hard time because there are a lot of people within the Democratic Party who, are still, on brand and on message with helping working class families, helping people who are in poor and minority communities. But there's a real struggle for them to do that because there's always a wing of the party, really the establishment, who has control of the party, who are, they're servants of corporations. They receive a lot of corporate donations, a lot of money from corporations. And so they have to serve those people as well, or they won't continue to get that corporate money to win their reelection. See, to win elections here in this country, a lot of times you can pretty much tell who's going to win by who's raised the most money. Now, I could go out and try and raise money from my neighbors and people around my community, and of course that would make more sense because of the people I'm actually representing. But a lot of times, not only is that difficult, but it's a lot easier if you just go to a corporation who might have a super PAC where they can give unlimited amounts of money, and so a lot of people take this route instead. And they end up having to answer those calls, once they're actually making those legislations, and their mind gets a little skewed as to who they're actually representing. And a lot of times it's not you, the individual, the American citizen. And so this is why you get things like, we're in a healthcare pandemic crisis, but they still won't say, oh, if you got COVID, even if you had to go to the hospital for 2, 3, 4 weeks, or maybe even longer, even if you don't have insurance, don't worry. This is a pandemic. It's affecting everyone. It's not your fault. You don't have to pay that bill. No. That's not what they're doing. In fact, what they're planning on doing is subsidizing COBRA, which basically means if you got let go from your job, you can pay into this program to get the same health insurance you had when you did have your job. Now, this is wildly unaffordable. I mean, you're still making people pay for health insurance when they just lost their only source of income. It doesn't really make any sense. Will it marginally help some people? Yes. It's probably better than nothing, but there's still going to be a lot of people left out of that program. And if you wonder why would you do something like that? Why would you not just give those people healthcare who have been affected by this healthcare crisis? Well, if you go look at who gave Joe Biden money when he was running for president, within that, you'll see a lot of people, or a lot of corporations, a lot of companies, especially a lot of health insurance companies. And so he has to serve, the people who voted for him, but also the corporations that gave him that money to win that election. So he's kind of in a bind. He's kind of in a pickle. So even if he wants to help those people, it always will come at usually means tested, and it's always going to guarantee that the corporations don't miss out. They always get served first. So if you're kind of new to this game, this is how it usually goes. There's a lot of big promises made by Democrats. Republicans, when they make promises, a lot of times they're empty too. But if it's a tax cut, or for voting for a military budget, that's really on both sides. But that usually will go through. If it's some deregulation, or some slashes to the budget, that'll usually go through. So they do follow up on those promises to a certain extent, even though it negatively affects a lot of people. But Democrats, they'll make, big promises like Joe Biden made, like $50,000 in student debt cancellation. That got chalked down to $10,000, and then that got chalked down to, well, maybe, and it'll be $10,000 if you qualify under this means test, which basically means you have to jump through 10 or 15 hoops before you can actually get that aid. So things like that, things like the $2,000 checks, $2,000, vote for us, you'll get $2,000. As soon as they got in office, it's, oh, well, actually we meant $1,400 because you already got $600 from the other administration that you just voted out for me when I said I was going to give you $2,000, but here I'll give you this $1,400, and well, maybe I'll give you this $1,400. Depends on how much you make first. Even if you make $80,000 and you live in LA, and you already get taxed, and then on top of that, the cost of living is super, super high. But you don't qualify for that, so you're not even going to get that money. So this is kind of what happens under Democratic administrations. I wasn't really politically active or knowledgeable during the Obama administration. So this is really the first time I'm seeing it firsthand. I'm seeing just in the first 6 weeks, all these promises Biden is breaking. He promised no more deportations. There have been deportations. He said he'd get back in the Iran deal. He's not getting back in that until Iran first, does what we want them to do, even though last time they got into the deal, 4 years later, Trump got us out of the deal. And so Biden's not going to do something, in a good faith manner and be like, I know that last administration, got us out of the deal, but we are who America is, and I can promise you that for the next 4 years we're going to abide by this deal, and we're going to make sure the next administration does too. No, they didn't say that's it. We're just not going to get back in the deal unless you first stop doing what you were doing. So this is what you have to deal with a Democratic administration, and it does seem very flowery. They are really, really good at the facade. It does look like they know what they're doing and they're competent. And compared to Trump, that in the Republicans, that is pretty easy to do, especially appearance-wise. But don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. There are a lot of things that Joe Biden could do. He could cancel all student debt. He could give you Medicare through the duration of the pandemic, so that you don't have to worry about going to the hospital if you don't have enough money, or calling an ambulance if you don't have enough money, or staying in the hospital if you don't have insurance. Like, you don't have to worry about these things. He could do that, but he's not going to. He's going to choose to subsidize something that'll give money straight to his corporate donors. That he could legalize weed. He could, deschedule it. That's completely in the power of the president, and it'd be big for him to do that, especially considering all the black and brown, but a lot of people that he locked up with that crime bill that he was so vociferously supporting, and adamant to remind you that the senator from Delaware has supported every major and minor crime bill. He could do that. He could, clear all expunge the records of everyone who's been charged with a nonviolent drug offense. He won't do that. There's a lot of things he can do. He has the executive power to do a lot of these things. He can pull us out of all these wars. He is the commander in chief. Instead, he hasn't completely halted the Yemenis war, or our support for Saudi Arabia in the Yemen genocide. He hasn't pulled us out of Iraq. He hasn't pulled us out of Afghanistan. I think he's put us back into Syria. Hey guys, this is billions of dollars every single day that's going to these wars. That's going to all these things that aren't helping you as the American citizen. In fact, they're bankrupting us here at home. So these are all things Joe Biden could do. He probably won't. He'll probably do something, half measure that will help some people, but will inevitably leave out so many of the people that thought they were going to get the things that he was promising, that they won't come out and vote in 2 years, and then the Democrats will probably lose the House, potentially the Senate as well. And then, Joe Biden will have 2 years. Well, he won't have the Congress. He'll say he wanted to do all these great things, even though he didn't do it the previous 2 years. And then we'll go from there. And that's the sad reality. I think we can change that if people like yourself and people like me actually push him, push the people that we got into power, progressives or just regular Democrats, corporate Democrats, whatever. We have to push all of them, because they do have the power to do all these things. But they won't do it if they're not pushed, and if you just go back to sleep because Trump's not around anymore, and the media's coverage of Biden is so fawning, and all these great things, and it's so diverse and all these great things, right? If you just allow that to lull you to sleep, then we'll be right back in the same situation we were in 2016 and 2024. So if you're new to politics, that's the game. Obviously, it's a lot deeper than that. Watch the channel. I'll dive deeper into all these issues. So make sure you like and subscribe. I try and do this in a digestible way so that if you're not really too keen into politics, you can take it in and learn from it. So follow the channel. If you're new to politics, that's the game.